I'm Travis Brown, founder and CEO of Mojo Marketing and Media. And this is my podcast, where I talk to the most successful Black and brown business executives who've broken through the barriers of today's business culture. Welcome to the Diverse and Talented Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Brown, and today I have the Senior Vice President of DEI for the Pacers Sports Entertainment, aka the parent company to the Fever and the Pacers, Tracy Ellis-Ward. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Travis, for having me.
Well, I'm doing my research, and I'm checking this out. I'm going, she's worked for the Big East Conference, UMass, Gonzaga, the NBA, and Michigan State. Is that how you dreamed it?
It is not how I dreamed it. I originally wanted to be an athletic director. And so when I got my first opportunity in sports at Michigan State, I got exposed to a lot of different things and had some interesting leadership and a lot of turnover in the AD chair. And at that point in time, I was like, wow, this is not a stable career, but I love college athletics. I love being around student athletes as a former athlete. And so just different opportunities began to present themselves in later years. And so I've been just about every aspect of sports, from the pro level to nonprofit and back to pro. So it's been a really great ride.
We're going to talk a little about that journey, but I want to go back to the college days. So All-American at Missouri. So them hooping days, right? We're recording this when after a post NCAA tournament for women's that shattered all kinds of records. You know, when you see what's happening today in the women's game versus when you played it, like what does that mean to you? What does that make you think?
It just brings a tremendous joy for all the women that are coming up in the game now, and the girls can really see and aspire to be on a professional team, not just to have to go overseas as the only option after college. So it's very exciting, an exciting time for women's sports in general. And I think the viewership of the last Final Four is evident of that and how much people are tuning in. So the disparities maybe that were uncovered for all the world to see a few seasons ago now have really, I think, propelled women's sports into the limelight.
Now your role, let's talk about your role as DEI for Pacers Sports Entertainment. So talk a little about what that role is and what's the work that you have on your plate.
Well, a lot of times when people hear those words, they're like, oh, it's about hiring. So the role is much more than about hiring. I partner with just about every vertical in the company. And so my vision is really to make sure that inclusion is on every lens of the business, whether that's our marketing, whether that's our ticket sales, whether that's our human resources arm. So I partner with a lot of the other leaders in the company to make sure that we are being an inclusive organization. So again, it's not just about hiring. It's about how we're spending our dollars in the community. It's about how we're investing in the community. It's about the work that we do in the community in terms of the groups that we're trying to do outreach with. So it's a very holistic approach.
And when you approach about this job, I think there are a lot of people feel like maybe in the DEI space, like that's a token job. You know, like, hey, they're checking a box because of, you know, post George Floyd type stuff, and they're not really about doing the work. You know, everything that I've heard about Pacers Sports Entertainment is like, no, that's not the case. You know, talk about how you decided to take that job and how important it was for you to know that you could actually have the right position, title to make the difference.
Well, I had a really great job already as a commissioner of women's basketball and also chief diversity officer at the Big East. So when they approached me about the role, I wasn't skeptical, but I really asked a lot of hard questions. And so having the opportunity to really meet with Rick and Mel and Todd and the senior leaders, I was really compelled to like dig more. And I think for me, the tipping point was talking to Steve Simon, who has a real heart. The Simon family, as you know, is just a tremendous asset to this community and their support system of why the Pacers are even still here in Indianapolis. So the conversation with him was really the tipping point in terms of the seriousness of the commitment that the organization was willing to make. Because I said, hey, I'm not moving 2,000 miles for something that's fly by night. And they convinced me that they were really serious about the work. And I feel tremendously blessed and supported in the role that I'm here.
You know, one of the things, that, not just in this role, and many of your roles, I'm gonna make some assumptions and hear your thoughts on this, is in trailblazing, you've showed up to be the only. or the first many times. Talk a little bit about some of those experiences and how you had to overcome some stuff, to be that only in the room.
Yeah, and I think my career trajectory has proven that everywhere that I've been hired, I've either been the first to start something new or one to fix something broken. And every spot that I've been in my career has been just that. And so here it's been the first. In my last position, it was also the first. The position before that, it was to fix something broken. And I think for me, that's just how I'm built. I love challenges. I'm easily bored. So if I'm hired to fix something broken, once it's fixed, I'm like, okay, what's next, right? And so that's just how the Lord has built me along my career. And it's molded me well in terms of the places that I've been.
When you think back at some of those key positions, talk about maybe one scenario that like you had to come in to fix some stuff and it was a little bit different. And what was that journey? Because most of our listeners are, trying to figure out how to build a business, how to keep a business, how to maneuver into their world. Right. So talk about what does it take to turn something around,
Well, one, you've got to be willing to make some hard decisions and kind of look around you and see where the stumbling blocks are or where the hurdles are that one you haven't been able to overcome, and then ask yourself the hard question, why? And a lot of times when you look in the mirror, sometimes you're the problem, right? Or the people that you have around you are the problem. So one of my positions that I had to let a lot of people go. And that was really hard because, again, when you lose your job, it equates to, you're taking food off somebody's table, right? They got a mortgage to pay, they have bills to pay. And so those are very, very tough decisions when you're talking about personnel. But at the end of the day, if you want to get to a certain outcome and the people that you have in your circle are hindering you from getting to that outcome, you really have to kind of, like I said, look in the mirror as a business owner and figure out, okay, how do I get myself out of this hole? Like, what kind of people do I need to have around me to really be successful, to help my business be successful, to have my organization be successful? And so those are really things that are key for me in terms of who I have on my staff, who I have around me, who I surround myself with, because you can't be in a company of fools because you're just going to go down the wrong path, right? So as much wisdom as you can have around you, the better.
Yeah. In different leadership experiences, how did you learn that, though? How did you learn going, yes, I can be okay with making those tough decisions, or here's the process that I go through to make those tough decisions? What's that learning curve look like?
I don't know. That's a great question. I think for me, I don't want to say it's innate, but I think over time, like you learn who's for you and who's not for you, right? And I really have a great discernment in terms of people. I think being a former student athlete helps that because you experience loss, you experience failure, you experience hard work and getting up early in the morning and still pushing through when you don't really feel like going to the 6 a.m. workouts. Like all of that work ethic, I think kind of comes into play and comes out in a different way when you're in the business side of the world.
You mentioned kind of basically the development from being an athlete, in today's sports. What's your thought process on how we're developing our young athletes today? You hear a lot of like, man, there's way too many games, not enough development, how we develop versus Europe. Like, what's your thought on the status of our youth in the game?
Yeah, that's a good question. Both of my kids played sports growing up. And I was one of those parents who didn't want to overcoach them because I saw the detriment of that in the world. So I do think skill development, particularly I'll stay with basketball because that's what I know and love. There isn't a lot of, in my opinion, coaching of the basics. You see a lot of students, even at the college level, still coming in the college game with a bad shot and still not knowing how to set a proper pick and, what real defense looks like. And some of that, you should have learned that in 4th, 5th grade, again, if you've been playing that long. I do think there's this notion of playing a lot of games is what people want. And unfortunately, parents have bought into that narrative as well with some of the different leagues that are out there. But skill development, you can't trade anything for skill development. If you're going to be a good shooter, you got to practice being a good shooter. If you're going to be a good defender, you got to practice being a good defender. And so it's a holistic game. And a lot of times, if you're just playing a lot of games, you don't really get those skills developed in that way.
So if you're thinking about, a conversation to parents that are out there and they're all trying to make this decision, like, what do I do with my kid? Where do I put them? What program? What advice do you have for parents? Because you've been through this, and you've been through it. Like, you played, you're around the game, you had kids come up through the game, you're seeing it from a different perspective. Like, what would you encourage parents to do right now with their kids? I'm
a big proponent of the multi-sport athlete. I think one of the detriments of sports in general is that kids are forced, and parents are convinced by coaches, are forced that they have to play something all year round, whether it's travel baseball, summer league, whatever it is. The multi-sport athlete, to me, is the best. And when you talk to coaches at the college level, the elite colleges, that's who they want. They want somebody that has been able to develop maybe running in the off season because they participated on the track team. They want somebody who maybe was on the football team because you have to think differently in terms of play development and teamwork. You want somebody maybe that's been on the baseball team because they know what it is to have a long day and play a doubleheader. My kids did everything growing up. My son wrestled, he played baseball, he played basketball, he played football, he did it all because I wanted them to figure out what they loved. Right. Yeah. Not because I thought, okay, this is going to lead to a scholarship someday, but for them to find their own individual passions. Both of my kids did Taekwondo growing up, and we purposely put them in Taekwondo because we didn't know anything about it. And we wanted them to learn something that we didn't know. Right. And so I think just exposing your kids to different opportunities is the best way to go so that they actually find their passion. Because you find so many kids, by the time they're in college, they're burnt out on the sport. Because that's the only thing that they've done from, third, fourth grade all the way up through high school. And so you want them to love it because that's where they're going to find their joy and success.
What is being kind of on the inside of the game, right? So you have a lot of experiences, but like now you get to see the game like from the inside and more on the corporate side of it than the game side of it, right? So what has that taught you about the game that you really like? And what has that kind of taught you about the game that you're just like, come on now?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've seen basketball particularly from all angles, right? From, coaching realms, the officiating realm, the operations realm. And right now in the pro space, it's a business, right? And so to be successful at the business, you've got to do business-like things, right? And make business-like decisions. And so corporate is a lot different than amateur, right? And so just learning the nuances of how to maneuver in those spaces has been super helpful for me. And I think part of that is because I've seen basketball from all different lenses. And so, right now I'm just kind of living out my purpose, I think.
When, thinking about your career as a whole, one of the things that's challenging for all of us, but I think sometimes our women get more of a mental load than some of us guys do when it comes to balancing family and being able to, climb ladder, create opportunities, take, high profile jobs. Talk a little about what was that family dynamic for you? I know kids are a little older now, but trying to navigate that, go to that next level and still be a great mom.
Yeah, I think you got to have a support system, right? And you got to figure out what your why is, right? And if you you have this internal consternation about one over the other, you're not going to be successful because you're always going to be worried about the other, right? And people talk about work-life balance, and I'm a big proponent of integration because there is no such thing.
Right.
Like every now and then you're going to over-index at work because your team makes the Big Ten tournament and they're going to be in the NCAA tournament. So that's more hours than if they're just a mediocre team and once the season's done, you're done, right? So the more successful teams are, the harder most likely that you have to work. And so that integration is key. And then you have to have like a village around you to actually kind of help mitigate some of the times when you're not at home. At the time when my husband was living, he was a great support system, right? He made sure that the kids had meals at night. He made sure that the homework got done because, I'm working a late night game, or I have to travel, or I have to be on the road this weekend. And so again, that village is super important, and you got to go into a situation if you're in a relationship to make sure that you're on the same page with what that looks like for your particular family situation.
Did you ever get to a point where you're like, I would like to take this job, but I just can't from a family perspective?
I did. Once my husband passed away, there was I definitely had to step back and say, okay, I can't be on the road every weekend, right? I can't work a job, that requires me to be out at 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So I really had to make some personal sacrifices and choices because I really had to be there for my kids. And so, sometimes in life, we have to make those choices, right? Again, and where your priorities are is where your choices need to be.
You're recording this at just an incredible time for the Pacers sports entertainment because the Pacers are doing really well. With Tyrese and the team's doing well. And today's a big day because for the Fever, the number one draft. So let's start on the Fever side of it first. From your perspective, like what does this mean to the organization where we are, getting Caitlin Clark? What does that mean to the organization and the growth of the Fever basketball organization?
Well, we can't say that we're getting that particular player at this point in time. We're saying we're picking the best available player that's going to be available in the draft. I think at this point in time, it's a great time for the franchise. We had the first pick last year, and we've got the first round pick this year. And I think just the energy around the team is just tremendous. And so I think that we're going to have so much talent that we're going to be an exciting team to watch. And I think this is a great time to be a Hoosier, to be a Pacer fan, to be a Fever fan. So I think the city's going to have a lot of things to be excited about.
When you see the development of the W coming around and some great players that have been laying this foundation for years as a league, what do you see, that you like about where the W is? What are things you'd love to see, that you can speak to within your role? What does that look? What are you excited about?
I'm excited about the addition of teams. I think they're bringing on a couple more teams in 25. I think the growth of the league. I think the stamina of the players, the talent, is just tremendous, right? And it's really hard to make a roster.
Right.
You're a first round draft pick, but you got to beat out the starters that are already there. So I just think the competition and the level of competitiveness is just tremendous right now. And so you're seeing female athletes coming out at their highest level, and participating at the highest level. And then when the season's over, they're going overseas and playing professionally over there as well. So I think you're seeing women's sports actually become this landscape where people can live out their purpose and be, athletes. When I was coming out of college, I wouldn't have thought that I could be able to have a career as a professional athlete and let alone have it be for 5, 7, 8 years. And I think that opportunity is really real for women right now.
And I love some of the things that are happening for women off the court. And although name, image, and likeness is really a college thing, but it's really started years and years ago. And I think none of the women are having the opportunities to get bigger endorsement deals and be a part of bigger media opportunities as things are growing as well, which is exciting as a girl dad to know that these opportunities are there. So switching to the Pacers, Pacers are exciting right now. Talk about what are you loving about the Pacers at this point?
Again, I think the similar thing is just the energy. I recall last season, coach was very adamant. We're a young team. We're going to be exciting, and we're going to lose some ones that we shouldn't lose, and we're going to win some that we shouldn't win, right? And he was true to course. We lost a lot of close games, but you could tell that the talent was there. And I think with some of the trades that they've made this season, it's just taken the team to another level. And now that we've kind of locked in a playoff spot for the first time in a long time, again, I just see the city really getting behind the team. It's a great group of young men. We're still young, but I think the sky's the limit, and they'll just keep getting better and better and better. Yeah.
I want to kind of finish out some of this conversation tackling the space of DEI. We use those letters interchangeable all the time. But the state of DEI as a whole, how are you feeling about the progress we're making and the gap that's still out there?
Yeah, well, I think nationwide you see this attack, right, on DE&I. And I think what people don't realize is I think there's a political narrative that's kind of arrested it right now. And people are misunderstanding what the terminology is about and what the work is about. And so when people don't know what something really is, you're operating out of a level of ignorance that leads you to make different decisions, right? Versus when you're educated and really study something, then you make different decisions, right? And that's anything in life. And so, unfortunately, I think that's where we are with this work. I think in some communities, the attack politically has caused people to kind of shrink back and be afraid. But I'm thankful again, like I said, in my role that, I'm invested, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be invested and get others to be invested with you in order to grow. And I think we've seen tremendous growth. And I think that growth also has made other people aware of like, oh, wait, what's happening over here? So I think that's why the attack has actually happened, because we're seeing progress, right? So when you're winning at something, if there's haters out there, they don't want to see you win, right? And so I think that's part of what's going on right now, in my opinion.
And as you think about all the work that is being done, what still is left to really tackle kind of in this particular space? Because yes, there's some political attack on it. There's all right, is it a fad? Is it over? Is it like, where do we go kind of from here? What's your thought about, like, not necessarily from pitch sports entertainment perspective, but like in our culture, like, what do we still have left to do? Yeah,
that's a great question. I think that to me, like, we're there, and when it's just integrated, it's part of your organizational DNA. It's part of how you do business. It's part of how you develop a marketing campaign. It's part of just everything, and it just becomes part of life. And I think right now, in so many ways, it's been sidelined and relegated to this add-on, and really it needs to be seen as an integration.
Yeah. Do you think it will get to a point where we won't have to have, the conversation about DEI? It will just truly be a part of the DNA of culture?
I want to say yes, because the optimist in me wants to say yes, but it's going to take time, right? And I think that's just anything. And when you look at the change continuum, there's got to be a lot of things in place for change to really happen. And you just look at some of the things that happened in the civil rights movement, like, there was a lot of optimism for all of those people that were involved. But at the end of the day, we're still sometimes fighting those same fights, right, that we were in the 60s. But you can't be deterred from that, because, again, progress has been made, but there's also more progress to be made. Yeah.
As you think about corporations right now that are kind of trying to figure out what they want to do with it, like if you're magic wanding this thing, you're telling them like, hey, here's what we all still need to do. What would that look like for you? Oh. You are the DE&I person. You get to tell everybody what to do. You get the magic wand this thing.
Yeah. Well, one, it would be committed, right? And not deterred and swayed from, bad press, politics, whatever. Because when you're committed to something, you're going to make it happen. And when you're not committed, when you're in it marginally, when you're in it because you think it's a fad, and when you're in anything that you think is temporal, you're not going to do your best work. So being committed leads to excellence. And so for me, that would probably be my advice. If I could just make everybody be committed, we would see something different.
And for people that are like, I'm considering that, like, that's a thing. If they were committed, what do you think would change? What would it look like? What would our world, what would that end up being like?
I think committed would look like having a diverse workforce, right? That, wouldn't be homogenous, and not necessarily just race, but gender, ethnicity, different ideas around the table. It wouldn't be, I think that commitment looks like how you spend your dollars. I think that commitment looks like who you do outreach to in the community. That commitment looks like, it looks very differently than it probably does for a lot of organizations at the present moment. And so again, you got to kind of look in the mirror as a business and figure out, like, what do you stand for, right? Like, what are your mission? What is your values? And at the end of the day, like, people talk about the business case of this work. The world and the demographics are becoming more Black and brown. So if you don't have a strategy to reach the demographics that this world is trending to, then you're going to lose out the business case for being relevant. I mean, you look, I keep tell people all the time, you're like, look what happened to Blockbuster. As that digital platform changed, they became irrelevant, right? And so as, the world becomes, more Spanish speaking, and like we have all these demographic shifts that are happening, you got to pay attention to that. And if you're not doing anything now and your workforce is not mirroring what's happening, you're going to lose touch as a business.
And what do you think that you have been able to do in your world that has probably been like I just wasn't sure this was going to happen this way, but after we've done the work, we've got buy-in, like we're actually seeing this happen differently?
In my current role or just in general?
I started your current role. Like, what is that? Because I think people go and they don't understand some of the impact for organizations. I know you guys have done such a great job, and obviously your role. So, like, what has been some wins that have changed the game?
I think we've had several wins. I think the fact that I think the dialogue in our office is much more free, perhaps, and I don't necessarily know what to compare it to, but people are asking hard questions, right? When they're struggling with issues, whether it's around race or gender or sexuality, like people are asking questions like, how can I, or do you know about X, Y, and Z, or help me understand this? And so I think creating spaces where people can ask questions without feeling like they're being demonized or you should know that, because we all are on this learning journey together, right? Yeah. I think another huge win in the office is we just unrolled in January an award for the company, the first DEI Champion Award for the company. So we're going to be recognizing employees in this space for doing great work. And somebody said, well, we really shouldn't be awarding people for doing the right thing. Well, what gets rewarded, you put value to it, right? And so we value this, so we're going to be rewarding people. And so that's a huge win. And that took over a year to come to fruition, but we stayed with it. We had a great committee that worked on putting that together. So I'm really excited about that as a win for the whole entire company.
I think something I just heard you say in there is that didn't happen overnight. Like that was a process. I think some people want that instant. That is a process, and staying diligent or committed, like you said earlier, to be able to do that. So great work. All right, so I'm going to put you on the Mojo hot seat. All right. So the Mojo hot seat is just some quick Q&As to some of Tracy's favorites.
Okay. All right. As long as it has nothing to do with hip hop, because I won't be able to answer
those questions. We'll see. All right. Favorite place of vacation?
Aruba, hands down.
Favorite food or restaurant?
Ooh. Favorite food. I like a lot of different, anything ethnic. I love Indian food. I love Mexican food. So, yeah.
A brand you love to support?
Brand I love to support. I love to support anything organic. Yeah.
This is not on my list, but random. So what shoes did you play in college? Do you remember?
I don't remember the brand. They were Nikes, but I don't know what brand they were. Yeah.
Outside of Pacers and Fever, a professional sports team that you like?
I would have to go with the Green Bay Packers. My kids would not own me if I didn't say that.
The Green Bay Packers. College that you still follow?
Ooh. I would say South Carolina women's basketball.
I was going to follow it up with a college coach that you just admire.
I have a great affinity for Dawn Staley. I knew her as a player when I was at the W, and I just think she's done a tremendous job there.
A TV show that you like to watch?
Law and Order: Criminal Intent.
I used to watch the SVU and got to a point I'm like, man, this is so deep. It's messing with my head. I can't watch it anymore. An athlete, entertainer, or actor that you just kind of have always liked?
Danny Glover.
Are you a Mac or PC?
PC.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone all the way.
A gaming station that you grew up and played as a kid?
Pac-Man, so I'm probably dating myself.
A movie that you like?
Ooh, I like a lot of movies. I love the Lord of the Rings. I love the Star Wars series. So I'm a big movie head.
What's the last series that you've that you've recently binge watched?
Ooh, I recently binge watched Call the Midwife on PBS.
Okay.
Yeah.
A book that you'd recommend?
Ooh, right now I'm reading 6 Types of Working Genius, which is pretty good. So I'm almost done with that. That
whole system, our team doesn't know this. We're dialing into the whole working genius, idea and concept right now. And then a nonprofit or cause that you are passionate about supporting.
I would say a nonprofit cause. That's a good question. I just joined the YMCA board, so maybe I should say the Y.
So now you're officially off the hot seat, but I do have one last question for you. You always say that everybody has a start date and then they have a dash and then they have another date. And at some point in time, people are going to look back and say, you know, Tracy Ellis-Ward, something. What do you want them to say about you?
Yeah, I tell my kids all the time, I want it, like my tombstone to read, great mother, faithful servant. And that's kind of where I lie.
Well, Tracy, thanks so much for,
thanks for having
taking
me.
some time. I forgot to coach you on this earlier, but we have everybody, when they're done, they get to do the clap and say, it's a wrap.
Oh my. It's a wrap.